There are no more whips in this house, I don't think. Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 164 in the series. I know, I'm back in the yarn room. Again, like 3 weeks in a row. It's amazing. It's amazing what finishing a book will do for your life. So yeah, I'm just enjoying it. I hope you are too. The fact that I'm back with another video. It's lovely to see you all again. Thanks for coming back around and hanging out with me. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome. It's nice to meet you. This is generally a podcast about garment design and modification, but I do all kinds of other things. So today it's socks and needle felting. Tomorrow, the world. You never know. I do have three sweaters on tap that I have either missing yarn or mostly it's missing yarn. Yeah, it's all missing yarn. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But generally, this is a podcast about sweaters and garments. So we will get back to that in the next couple of episodes. Today, I have a tale of woe for you. And I want us to all have a little woe together, perhaps. A moment of woe. I have a 10-year-old sock project. A 10-year-old whip. And I'm sure I'm not the only one with a languishing for a decade whip. So I want to give you all just a moment, pause the video, time out, go to your Ravelry pages, go to your, notes, your journals, and look, just see how old your oldest whip is, because I want to know. I want to know how old everybody's whips are. Mine was close to a decade. That's all I'm saying. So we're going to talk about the 10-year sock project today. And I also have a new needle felting sculpture for you, which was a kit from the Woolen Wagon, which is Megan Nedds. We'll talk about that. And before we get started, I just want to say, usually I say where you can find me. So I'm Knitting the Stash everywhere. Ravelry, YouTube, obviously, Instagram, and over on the website, knittingthestash.com, where all my online classes are. And you can also find the Flock Farm Yarn Shop. If you're looking for small batch indie yarn from around the United States, that's the place to go. It's a nice place. I'm actually doing a little clear out right now, so the newsletter subscribers got a little coupon deal in the mail, and thank you so much for all of you who are helping me to clear the shelves for Shorn 5. I appreciate it so much. Your orders are going out today and tomorrow. And if you want to join the newsletter, get over to knittingthestash.com and hop on there. I'm sending out notices about Shorn 5, which is my own small batch yarn that will be released in September. Newsletter subscribers will get a jump on the whole thing. There are limited skeins this year, as always, but especially this year because we have 3 different colors, 2 beautiful kits from Erica Field, all kinds of fun stuff going on. So if you want to be involved in Shorn 5 and that release in September, get on the newsletter list. Yeah, thanks for all the support for Shorn all these many years. It's been quite a project, and as those of you who just read the newsletter know, it's a little bit of a bittersweet Shorn because it is the last of the Shorn line. This is it. This is the last of Kathy's fleece. I mixed it with a little bit of Rhonda's fleece from Nebraska, from You and Us, but that's the last Shorn. So this will be a little bit bittersweet, but also wonderful because I've had such a great time working with Kathy these last 5 years. So anyway, I'm going to wipe away a tear, probably off camera, but thank you. Thank you to everybody who's been supporting Shorn all these years. All right, on that note, let's turn to our tale of woe, shall we? Now, again, in the comments, I want to hear the length of your longest standing whip because I want to be impressed. I was pretty impressed that this one is almost 10 years old. Let me show you what we're working about. This is the, I actually could not even remember the name of this sock pattern. So I'm going to tell it like a story of discovery because that's kind of what's happened here. This is, I'll just hold up one of them so you can see. This is a sock pattern that I picked up on my first trip to London, which was at least a decade ago. And I went to Loops, which is a really cool little shop in a kind of alleyway in London, beautiful little spot. It has two different levels. You kind of like tucked away from everything. It's really quiet in there, you know, from the hustle and bustle. And I remember searching for it when I went to London, and I was in London for the first time. I was lost half the time, but I finally found this little shop and I closed the door, like opened it, went inside, closed the door, and it was just like, oh, I hadn't been to that many local yarn shops at that point. And I don't know, there was something about visiting, there always is something about visiting a little yarn shop in the city that you're in that just does something good for your heart. So, so this was my first trip to London, and I couldn't really afford too much, and I also didn't have room in my bags because I travel light. I didn't have like a checked bag or anything like that. I know now that what you should do is travel with an empty bag so you can bring home all the yarn. I know, you all have taught me over the years, but I didn't know that at that point. So I had very little room, and I thought, okay, I can buy a pattern. And I bought like paper pattern from this shop. I had all this other little yarn that I really wanted to get, but I got the pattern. Took it home and I matched it up. I know this from the bag that I found these socks in. I matched it up with some Miss Babs from back in the day. Miss Babs is a pretty cool indie dyer based in Tennessee. And yeah, she was big for a long time. I think she's still pretty big, depending on what you're knitting and who you are. And she does a really amazing sale right around Boxing Day, if I remember. It's like the day after Christmas or something like that. Anyway, that's probably where I got this yarn. So this is a Hot Shot 3-ply fingering yarn, 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, your typical 400 yards for 4 ounces, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this was in with the one sock that was finished. I had a tag, plum was the colorway. So, and then I had this extra yarn. This is the plum Miss Babs, very pretty. It's got a little variation to it. It has a little dusky thing going on, I think. It's just, I don't know, it's really pretty yarn, obviously. That's why I liked it. So I paired that yarn with this pattern, and I knit the first sock. I probably struggled with it a little bit because you can see, I'll turn it so you can see the actual cable pattern. It's a twisted stitch, little kind of basic cable pattern that runs all the way up, from the toe all the way up to the cuff. And actually the other way because they're cuff to toe socks. Sorry, I'm confusing you. So it has this beautiful twisted stitch pattern on both the front of the leg and the back of the leg. And, your typical heel flap, gusset, construction wise, they're not anything super special. Just your standard decreases at the toe. Really simple, beautiful sock. And I knit this one. This one's finished. It was finished like this in the bag where I found the socks. And then there was the half finished sock. Not even half finished, like a third of the way finished. So I've put it on the block, but I'm just going to pull it off here. This is the other sock that's now finished. I had about that much of the sock finished. I can't even remember exactly why I went away from it. One sock was finished. I mean, it's not like I don't really suffer from the sleeve island or like second sock syndrome or anything like that. I'm pretty much like a monogamous knitter. You all know this. So I finish if I started, I usually finish it. So it's unclear why this was left this way. I don't know. But I do remember having picked up the project once again during that 10-year time span and completely messing it up. And when I say completely, like, I don't even think I looked at the pattern. I think at that point I was like, I got this. It's a sock, like whatever. And I didn't remember where the decreases are positioned. They are positioned here, right along the edge of the pattern, right? So you can see these little decreases that happen, pop, 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 all the way down. Well, when I picked this sock up, I just decided to decrease over here. So I thought I had pulled them all out. I thought, this is where the tale of woe really begins, I thought I had pulled out all the erroneous decreases that I had added to the sock, but I can still see them. There's still a couple right there, just out in plain view. So I obviously didn't do my total homework of like pulling this all the way back to where I knew where I was. Obviously I set it down that second time because that time I remember, because I had messed up the decreases so badly, and I was just like, this is crazy. It languished. It lingered. Languished. That's a really interesting kind of like, we could do that. Anyway, it languished in the bag. Then I found it and pulled it out about a week ago, maybe a week and a half. And I was like, I am going to finish this. We're going to take care of this WIP. And I looked at my Ravelry page and I asked Spencer, my husband, I said, how long do you think it's been since I started these socks. And he was like, oh, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. Well, 2016, I think it was January, so it's a little closer to 2015. So we're talking really close to a decade here. And what I had was the original sock that I knitted that looked pretty good. And I had this, I don't know, quarter of a sock that was knit and then messed up and then ripped back and anyway. And I had these instructions. So I didn't even have the original pattern. What I had was a photocopied version of the pattern, highlighted to all get out, with notes, start here, chart A, first foot this way, blah, blah, blah. You know, just, it looks like someone who started out well. It started okay. It started with highlighting. It started with like attention to detail. And then it just deteriorated into like, I'm not even sure how to interpret half of the notes that are on here. Anyway, there were also 1 page of charts. Okay, 1 page of charts with a key. It's somewhere in here. So it's, you know, twisted stitch key, little key that I can put on my magnetic thing. So, you know, I was like, all right, I'm going to do my due diligence this time. Totally messed it up last time. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to mess up a sock again. So I, you know, sat there, read my knitting, counted rows, looked through the pattern, got to the point where I was like, I am pretty sure that at this point I am at row 8 on the chart, and I've done a certain number of decreases, and I triple checked it 15 different ways. I checked it against reading the knitting, I checked it against my notes, I checked it against the other sock that was complete. I felt like I was in a good spot. And that is where the other half of the Tale of Woe begins. So I started knitting. I started on row 8 of the chart. Who leaves a sock at row 8? I don't know. And I just started knitting, and it was like, okay, I'm getting this. I see where the decreases are. Okay, we're in the right spot. Everything's looking good. And I got all the way down to the foot, and I did the heel flap and the gusset, and then I was like, you know what? I should look back. Just see what happened. Well, what happened up here, where I started again, right here, I'm not sure you'll be able to see it on the camera. I managed to not have the right row. Even after all my futzing and reading and all the whatever, I still got something wrong here. And at the very end, I showed these socks to Spencer, and he diagnosed the actual problem, which was that in one sock, the little cable-y pattern goes one way. Like in this one, I'll try to turn them so you can see it. In this one, you can see that it's kind of like moving in this direction. And the pattern is supposed to be mirrored if you, I don't know, were to actually find the original pattern and read it, which I didn't have. You can see up here, these are mirrored. They go in this direction. So when I started on row 8 of the chart, I started on row A of the original chart, which meant that what happens here, and Spencer he's always so good at seeing these. He's like the gorilla in the room guy. He was like, well, what you did here is you reversed your cables. It kind of goes like this. And I was like, oh no, you're totally right. You can see it now? It starts off going in this direction, and then it starts going in this direction. Everything below that total mix-up looks cool. I mean, it's, you know, it's well done. The cables are fine all the way in the front and the back. It's just that one little area where I decided to just go rogue and just, why bother mirroring? Everything else is mirrored. Why bother, right? Well, if the Tale of Woe ended there, that would have been enough, I think. And at that point, I was all the way down here somewhere, you know, working on the foot. And I noticed that, and then Spencer was like, oh, I see what you did. And I was like, oh, so here's the choice on this 10-year WIP. Do I rip it all out and try to fix it? Or do I just leave it and assume that this is going to be up in a pant leg and no one's going to see it? And he's like, just finish the socks. So I did. And it's done. And you know what? On the front of your shin, I don't think anyone's going to notice. But as I said, that's not where the Tale of Woe fully ended. When I got down to the foot, actually when I got down to the toe, all the way down to the toe, and I started to do my, toe shaping decreases, I looked at the pattern and the pattern said, you need 33 stitches, on the top, which I had totally checked. There are 23 stitches in the pattern, 5 on each side, 33. Awesome. I had just assumed that when I did my gusset decreases, that I had left 33 stitches on the foot, But I didn't. I left 23 stitches on the foot. Now, for some strange reason, maybe it's the wonder of wool, the ability of wool to stretch. I don't know. 23 stitches still works for my foot. Like, I was trying this on the whole time, and I was like, oh, it still fits my foot. So I had to do a little bit of funny business here where I moved a couple stitches from here to the back, and I just did the decreases on the front of the sock for the first 3 decrease rounds, leaving the back undecreased. So you can see here that the decreases are a little funny, right? If you're looking very closely, you can see that this line, which is supposed to be continuous all the way down to the toe, is not continuous. This is on the correct sock. You can see that line goes all the way down. Right, that's where the decrease is supposed to be on both the front and the back. So we have that issue. It still fits. It still looks okay. And I'm going to just take that as a 10-year-old WIP that is finally finished. So let's celebrate at the end of this Tale of Woe and say to ourselves, hey man, you finished the other sock. after many trials and tribulations, you have 2 knee socks, and that's pretty awesome, because knee socks are no joke. That's the thing about knee socks. I've only knit one other pair of knee socks, and I will pull them out here. This is my other pair of knee socks that I think I ad-libbed these from maybe Susan B. Anderson, or I added some ribbing. I don't know, I just basically ad-libbed them. I just added some ribbing to the front to kind of hold them together, and the back, because if you're going all the way up your calf, you need something to kind of hold it all together. So I do have some ribbing on the front and the back. It's this cool indie dyer. I don't think she's actually dyeing anymore. And these socks were kind of a little bit of a disappointment. I think I wore them 2 or 3 times, and you can see what's kind of happened here. And I don't know, I'm not a huge sock knitter or wearer, but I do know that socks tend to wear out pretty well on the bottom if you're wearing them. These just seemed extra worn out, felty, fuzzy, no holes though. So, no holes. So that's my other pair of knee socks. Very kind of similar to these, except that they're not, as fancy. But that was my other experience with knitting knee socks, is that they take a long time. It's like knitting sleeves for your legs. That's what I'll say. Yeah. For those of you who have knit knee socks, you know this. So they're done. Now, as I was getting ready for this podcast, I decided to do a deep search of my archive, because I thought to myself, I would not have just gotten rid of the original pattern. Like, I'm not that kind of knitter. I'm someone who scurries things away. So I thought it's gotta be here somewhere. So I searched the bookshelves, the magazine stacks, just going through paper by paper all over. Guess what I found? The original pattern. Here it is. This is the Hippity Hop socks from Loops, as I remembered, Loop, right? And if you flip through here, if you're kind of looking just to see oh, was there a different chart? There sure was. Didn't photocopy that one. So, socks are done. We're happy with the socks, mostly. And I think we'll just leave it at that. So if you're interested in knitting a cool sock pattern that has mirrored cables, look no further than the Hippity Hop pattern by Loop, London. Maybe it won't take you 10 years to knit them. All right, moving on from a 10-year WIP to some needle felting, shall we? I've been giving you a little peek into my needle felting at the end of each of these knitting episodes, just in case you're curious, and it seems like from last episode, a bunch of you are actually pretty curious about needle felting, or you've tried it yourself, and it can be a really fun little thing to be doing. So what I've been working on is a Sun Conure, and this is the little guy right now. I've just finished doing what Megan Nedds calls color mapping, and maybe it's a term that's more prominent in all of needle felting circles. I don't know because I'm a new needle felter, but color mapping is basically, at least according to what Megan was talking about in the pattern, where if you're going to put a merino top coat on, you know, a sculpture, you can kind of set yourself up with the right colors on the actual creature, so that when you go to put that top coat on, you have a map of where you're putting different colors, just to keep things straight. So this guy started out as just white core wool. I'll try to put in some pictures here, a little bit of video. And the first thing I had to create were the little feet. Totally new techniques to me in this kit. This is the, as I mentioned, this is the Woolen Wagons. This is Megan Nedds, who I've been following for years. I did a feature with Megan, an interview over on the old Knitting the Stash WordPress blog, probably over a decade ago. We had a lot of fun talking about needle felting. So Megan's been at it for a very long time, and she offers courses in her studio in Ohio. So if you're anywhere near Ohio, lucky you, you have access to Megan's awesome classes, which I am dying to go take at some point. So this is the needle felted Sun Conure, and the instructions are unbelievable. Great detail, really cool techniques, stuff I've never tried before or even heard of before, that I'm seeing now that I've done it, I'm seeing it in other places. So like, for example, the feet, you use this technique where you use a particular kind of glue to get the wool to stick to the feet so that it looks a little bit like skin. It doesn't look, you know, you're not needle felting the feet, you're actually kind of gluing the wool down to create that different kind of look. I made the little talons out of a new kind of clay. I had not used this particular kind of clay before. It was really fun to work with. It was included in the kit. And the beak was also a different, I think this beak might have been a clay that I'd worked with before. I can't remember. Like I said, I'm new to all this. And the eyes are just little, actually my mom gave me like her old needle felting stuff that she wasn't going to use anymore. And it had a little baggie of like black eyes. Megan's kit comes with eyes, but you're supposed to paint them, and I didn't want to do all that. I was just like not feeling the fuss at that point. So I pulled these eyes out of my mom's old needle felting stuff, and they're like these screw-in plastic eyes that are shaped not quite circularly, but I think they actually turned out really well. I did this as part of the kit, as part of the pattern. You basically create these awesome eyelids for the eyes so that they look like they're really embedded in the head. I'm always very proud of. I love the way eyes turn out. They just give the creature such a like personality. So I'm really happy so far with the way these eyes came out. And the beak too is really cute, but the beak was also a tale of woe because I was really proud of the beak. You have to do all these funky things, bake it on a hook in the oven. Like, you know, it's like, I didn't quite know what I was getting into, but anyway, the beak was finished and I was like, okay, I gotta attach it to the face. So I put the super glue in the back and like pushed. And then I realized my finger was stuck to the beak and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck to the beak. And it was like really painful because, you know, if you've actually been pushing on super glue for some time, it's like, it's stuck. So of course I reached in with my other hand, try to like free it. And then the other hand stuck. And it was like some horrible comedy moment where you're just like, I'm stuck to the bird. I can't free myself. So I finally got this hand free and then I managed to like peel my poor hand off. But now I need to go back and sand off my thumb basically from the beak. The beak looked really good. And then I, you know, attached myself to it. So anyway, that needs to be fixed. But this guy is going to get a whole lot more detail. He can stand up by himself, which is pretty cool. I'm very happy about the balance there. So he's going to get wings and tail feathers and, you know, all kinds of like specialty flair, which will be fun because in the end, it's going to look like this guy. So all the little tail feathers and the total merino top coat over like the head and the neck. Yeah, but I'm not too unhappy with the way that this little guy is turning out. So I would recommend Megan's needle felting kits. I've been talking on here about kits because I had the Hamish, the Highland cow, was from a kit from World of Wool. and I mentioned that on one of the earlier episodes. I think these kits from Megan are really great, especially even for beginners, because there's just so much detail. How to do things, what to do. There's, you know, ways to measure what you're doing so that you have the right idea. The wire armature that she included is tough as nails. It's not flimsy at all. She included all the clay, and there was just a lot of really nice. I just really like these kits. I would be very tempted to get another kit from Megan. Megan also has, well, she has a whole Etsy shop that I went back to after a decade. This is the decade-long episode. After a decade of, after I interviewed her, I went back over to see what's going on because I follow her on Facebook. You can see all of her creations on Facebook, and she does beautiful, beautiful, very lifelike animals. So just incredible stuff. And her Etsy page has these basically full instructions. So you don't have to buy the kit. Like if you don't want to buy all the wool and wire and clay and stuff to go with, what you can just purchase is like the PDF instructions on how to make the different creatures that she has up there. You can also buy just the armature maps. It's such a cool way to do it, right? I mean, you don't have to, if you have a lot of wool lying around and you just want to create your own squirrel or badger or cat or whatever it is, you can check out her really great PDF tutorials or just the armature, which I think the armature is like half the battle as far as I can tell with needle felting, because if your armature is the right size and the right proportions and everything, the realism of the creature is just, it comes out better that way. So yeah, highly recommend her kits. Really like her work. Check her out on Facebook too if you want to be inspired by like a really awesome needle felter. So hopefully I've put some video in here of me working on this little guy and some photos. You can see the time lapse of him coming along. I'm pretty excited to go back to my little studio mat and get his feathers going and see what he kind of turns into. So that's what I've been up to aside from my 10-year socks. And I did promise that I would mention all the sweaters that I'm thinking of working on. I'm not just thinking, they're going to be the next 3 sweaters. I just haven't finalized all the yarn. Like one of them is for a new book that's coming out from Lane, which you might have seen. A lot of the pre-order excitement was happening just previous to this video during the week before I'm putting this video out. So that I have a sweater that I'm knitting for them for that launch. I have a old Isabel Kramer pattern that was a Swan's Island pattern that I'm going to knit. It's kind of, it has solid color up here, then alternating stripes and a kind of turned beautiful hem. So there's that one. And then there's the last one that I just found last night, which is again, it's kind of like a mohair fingering weight yarn. And it has this cool patch of like a triangle on the back, and it just looks kind of relaxed and pretty. So that'll probably be up there too. There are no more whips in this house, I don't think. Anyway, I think that's about it for this episode. I'm starting to ramble. It was lovely to see all of you. I want to say a thank you to the Patreon producers, and that's Lenore, Jennifer, Rose, Erica, Kendra, and Nargis. Thank you for supporting this podcast during August. And if you're interested, Patreon, you can head over there, or in Coopey. All the links are down below. But I will hopefully see you in a couple of weeks. So take care. Happy knitting. Bye-bye.